When I finally had enough money to buy almost anything I wanted, there was no one left I wanted to share it with. My name is Petter. I am 85 years old, and for most of my life I believed that saving money was the same thing as building a good life. It took me more than 80 years to understand that sometimes, while you are busy protecting your future, you quietly lose the present. I grew up in a small house with 5 people and very little money. My father worked every day until his hands looked older than the rest of him. My mother could turn 1 loaf of bread into 3 meals and somehow still make us feel cared for. In our house, money was never spoken about softly. It was spoken about with fear. I remember hearing my parents argue late at night when they thought we were asleep. They would whisper about rent, about bills, about what would happen if one of them got sick. I lay in bed listening to those whispers and promised myself something very young and very dangerous. I promised that when I grew up, I would never let money control my life. The strange thing is that promise ended up controlling my whole life. By the time I was 25, I had a good job at a shipping company. I worked hard, harder than anyone else around me. I took extra shifts. I stayed late. I never spent money unless I had to. I did not go on trips with friends. I did not buy nice clothes. I did not waste money on restaurants or holidays or anything that felt unnecessary. When I was 32, I met a woman named Anna. She laughed easily, and she had a way of making ordinary days feel warm. She liked simple things: a walk by the lake, coffee in a little cafe, a weekend drive with no destination. She once asked me to take a short trip with her to the coast. It was not expensive, just 2 days away. She had found a small cabin near the water. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with a pencil and a piece of paper, calculating what those 2 days would cost. The cabin, the petrol, the meals. I looked at the number and told her maybe next year. She smiled and said she understood. The next year I said the same thing. I kept telling myself there would be time later, when I had saved enough. Later became my favorite word. Later we will travel. Later we will celebrate. Later we will rest. Later I will spend more time with you. Anna never complained much. That is what made it worse. She accepted my habits because she loved me. We got married. We bought a small house. We had a son. I loved my family deeply. At least I believed I did. But I thought love meant providing. I thought if I worked hard enough and saved carefully enough, I was giving them everything they needed. So I kept working. When my son was 10 years old, he asked me to come watch him play in a school football match. I told him I had to work that Saturday because overtime paid extra. He nodded and said it was all right. That night, when I came home, there was a drawing on the kitchen table. It was a picture of a football field. All the fathers were standing on the side. Above one little boy, there was an empty space. I knew that empty space was supposed to be me. I kept the drawing, but I still did not change. Years passed. I saved every spare coin. I repaired old things instead of replacing them. I said no to dinners out. I said no to holidays. I said no to small moments that cost money, because I believed I was saying yes to something bigger. By the time I was 50, we had more money than I ever imagined possible. We had savings in the bank. We owned our house. I finally felt safe. But safety can be a lonely place if you arrive there too late. Anna had become quieter over the years. One evening she sat beside me in the living room and said something I have never forgotten. She said, "Petter, we spent our whole lives waiting for life to begin." I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to explain that everything I did was for us. But deep down, I knew she was telling the truth. A year later, she became sick. At first, we thought it was something small. Then there were more appointments, more tests, more waiting rooms. One afternoon, a doctor sat across from us and spoke gently, and I understood from the look in Anna's eyes that our time had suddenly become very small. In those months, I would have given every cent I had saved just to go back and say yes to all the things I had refused. Yes to the cabin by the sea. Yes to the little cafe. Yes to the weekend drives. Yes to the football match. Yes to one more ordinary afternoon when nobody was in a hurry. After Anna died, the house became unbearably quiet. I would sit in the same chair every evening and look around at all the things I had worked so hard to protect: the savings account, the paid-off house, the furniture we barely used. And I realized none of those things could sit beside me. None of them could laugh. None of them could forgive me. My son was grown by then. He lived in another city. We spoke on the phone now and then, but there was a distance between us that had not appeared all at once. It had been built slowly. One missed game, one missed dinner, one missed conversation at a time. One day he came to visit me. We sat in the garden for a while without saying much. Then he looked at me and said, "Dad, you always gave us everything except yourself." I wish I could tell you that I had a good answer. I did not. The truth is, I spent so many years trying to make sure we would never suffer that I forgot people do not only suffer from having too little. Sometimes they suffer because something important is missing, even in a comfortable house. I am not telling you to waste money. I am not telling you to live carelessly. There is wisdom in being careful. There is dignity in working hard. But there must also be room for life. There must be room for the meal that costs a little too much but becomes a memory 20 years later. There must be room for the trip that does not make sense on paper. There must be room for the people you love while they are still here and while they are still asking, because one day they stop asking. At 85, I have learned that money can buy comfort, and comfort matters, but it cannot buy back time. It cannot buy back a childhood you were too busy to notice. It cannot buy back the hand you did not hold enough. It cannot buy back the years you kept postponing because you thought you had more of them. If you are always waiting until everything is secure, until every bill is paid, until every fear is gone, you may wake up one morning and find that life has already happened without you. So before this day ends, call someone, sit with someone, go somewhere. Spend an hour or a little money on something that will not make your account larger, but might make your life fuller. Because after all these years, I can tell you the most expensive thing in the world is not what you buy. It is what you lose while trying to save.